Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to another episode of GEEXX Reads. Today we'll talk about the book The Obelisk Gate by N.K. Jemisin, an image which you will see here. This is the second book in the Broken Earth trilogy. There may be some spoilers for the first book, maybe some minor ones for the second. But for a bit of a recap for the first book was told from multiple perspectives, mostly three different people. That, and spoiler warning, you eventually found that it's the same person at three different stages of their life. You know, it's a young girl under the age of 10, girl in her early mid-20s, and then a woman in middle age. So someone between 15 and 20 years in each of the various parts of their life, and they do change names throughout each section, which is why in the beginning it's not sure that it's the same person, although the reasons for changing their name is explained. The current timeline is the middle-aged woman. At this point in the narrative, she's calling herself Essen. What pretty much drives her narrative through the story is that her 3-year-old son was beaten to death by her husband, and her I think 7, 8, 9-year-old daughter had been taken by said husband. She does not know where. So her driving narrative through the first book is pursuit of her husband and daughter. Nemisin is an Origone. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but Origones in this series can control Earth. They're kind of like Earthbenders from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Not quite, it doesn't quite work the same, but they can draw energy from around themselves and shift the Earth around. Their primary function is to prevent earthquakes, find underground water, find underground resources, those sorts of things. And, you know, like build barrier reefs to protect coastal, like coastal villages from tsunamis and weather and things like that. Origones are basically feared and hated by most of society because they can be dangerous. Drawing energy from around them could potentially kill people. If you draw all the heat from a person's body, it turns them into a meatsicle. And this is the most common form of accidents that happen, although they can cause earthquakes and, you know, open up holes in the ground and all kinds of dangerous things if they panic and if they're uncontrolled. This series of books, though I've only read the first 2 so far, the world is very harsh because the continent, the planet itself, is tectonically unstable. There are periodic volcanic winters, so Origones are very useful in preventing what they call a season, a 5th season. In the last 10,000 years of recorded history, there have been about 12 of them. So anywhere between 100 to 3,000 or 4,000 years, some massive volcanic event happens which blankets the Earth in ash, blots out the sun for a few years to for maybe a few decades. So the world is harsh for practical reasons. You know, when the crops are dying, your livestock is dying, the population is dying, you have to be ruthlessly practical. So it makes it hard to like the characters in this book because they all, no matter how they start off, learn to be ruthlessly practical. It is something that is basically drilled into everyone's head from a young age. You must do these things for the human race to survive. I guess that's enough backstory. This book takes place immediately after the first one. Essen has basically found a community. There had a new season is starting. It starts in the first book. That's the catastrophe in Essen's timeline. You know, there's been a new season that started off. You know, a massive tectonic event happened in like the most populated and region of the continent, the major capital. Millions of people have died. Millions more will die. There was almost constant ashfall. She has found an underground community that accepts wild Origones, which derogatorily are called Ragas. Some more backstory. Origones are not allowed to not be controlled by the government. Basically, they are found as children. If they're found before they're killed by their family and their community, they're basically taken by the government and trained into, you know, official Origones. The Origins are controlled by the Guardians, who are somehow immune to their abilities. So, you know, if an Origin goes wild or does not obey, they are killed. They are basically a controlled group of people with certain privileges, but also being treated like property. Esun has basically gone into hiding after the events of the first book. That's why she's now Essen. She is hiding. She basically abandoned her post, went out to live in the wild. There's more to it, but that's the basics of it. So she hid her origin and the fact that both of her children were powerful origins as well. She tried to keep them hidden as well. Turns out that's why her husband beat her youngest son to death. No idea what happened to her daughter. So, like in the first book, this book is told from multiple perspectives. One of them being, like I said, Essen has found a community that took her in at the end of the book. I'm bouncing around, I'm rambling. Anyway, in the first book, Essen found a community that took her in. It was live underground. At the start of the book, she is kind of still wants to pursue her daughter, Nessun, but realizes that too much time has passed and she probably will never find her. The other point of view, one of the other points of view is that it's from her daughter's perspective. We learn out what happened when her father beat her younger brother to death, the fact that he took her with him, the fact that because his daughter is his favorite, he can't see her as a Raga, as an Origin. He refuses to believe it. He wants to do something about it. So he takes her away. He is basically living in denial. But we learn the story from her point of view, and I find it very interesting to see how her story progresses. There's a third point of view which is also interesting and fills in a lot of holes that some of the first book left in the story and in the history of the world and why things are working the way they are, why things happen the way they are. I'm not going to tell you who that point of view is. I think that would be too much big of a spoiler. But it is one of those things that gives you perspective. It's people from the first book that you might have thought were villains may still be villains, but when things are explained a certain way, you're thinking, okay, this is really messed up, but it's the way these people are justifying their actions to themselves. Like I said, this world needs to be ruthlessly practical to survive, and it all revolves around. Not all revolves around that, but a lot of the justifications that people make to themselves, they think they're being good people. They think they're doing what is necessary for the survival of everyone and for the betterment of everyone, no matter how cruel or unfeeling it may seem their actions are. They have, to them, legitimate and good reasons. It really puts into perspective that no one thinks they're the villain, because they, when you start seeing things from other people's perspectives and start learning the reasons that people do things, you realize that no, they don't think that they're doing anything wrong. They think these people who are villains think their actions are either necessary or for the good of everyone. And I really enjoyed watching some of the relationships develop. Asun is hard to like. You learn from the events in the first book how horrible her life has been, how what little moments of joy she's had have been taken or ruined from her. Some of them through her own actions. She's just had a miserable life, and so she's just broke. She's a broken person, and she's hard to like because of it. Watching Nessa and her daughter progress, you start to see her following the same path. I mean, this is a season. Things are getting worse. Food is getting scarce. Governments have collapsed. Communities have collapsed. People have formed roving bands of bandits. All the things you expect to happen in a post-apocalypse. And watching her go from being a quiet, caring young girl, to being someone who is learning to be practically you know, ruthlessly practical. It's kind of heartbreaking to watch, but at the same time, I really enjoy her chapters and the chapters surrounding her and watching her relationships develop with the people around her. Some of which are good and some of which are messed up and some of which are bad. And the bad ones are messed up too. I think that's all the story I'm going to spoil. But I did enjoy this book more than the first one. The fifth season. The third book is called The Stone Sky, which I will read after this because, like the first book, this one ended on a cliffhanger. They did a lot of work explaining background stuff, and so because of that, I think I can see where the third book is going to go. There are certainly two plot points that I can pretty much guarantee are going to happen, just from what I found in reading this. Doesn't mean that's bad. The book is about the same size as this. It'll probably take me about as long to read. This book took me maybe like 4 or 5 days. I read it slow. That's slow for me. So I do recommend this book. You know, I also always recommend reading the first book first. Did enjoy this book second. One of my criticisms that I'm going to say, and the reason I left my bookmarking, is that that's the appendix. The appendix is like 50 pages. Well, it's appendix and also like first chapter of the next book and first chapter of another series by the same author. So there's a lot of excess pages here, which always annoys me because I'm like reading, and think I got. It's like, wait, it's ended? Damn it! I hate when that happens. This is probably one of my longest book reviews ever. Probably because I had something to say for a change. But anyway, as always, thanks for watching. As always, this stuff is crap. And until next time, good hunting.